Champaign County Agriculture Today with your host, Dennis Riggs.
Hello and welcome to Champaign County Agriculture Today. My name is Dennis Riggs, your host for the next half hour or so as we talk about agriculture, one of the most important industries here in the state of Illinois. Agriculture, when you think of that, you think of growing fields and barns and tool sheds out there along the countryside. But you know what? Behind every one of those farming operations that we pass as we drive to work or as we go out on vacation, every one of those operations have people behind them. The true farmers, the people that live on the land and work the land and make agriculture come alive each spring and bring in the bountiful harvest each fall. Well, how's that family farm work? How does the people interact? And more importantly, how does it sustain after many generations? Here in East Central Illinois, we have many farming operations that are multi-generational. 3, 4, 5 generations of the same family that have been on their land, tilling that land over all the different changes in technology, weather, and techniques. Today, we're going to find out how those farming operations start with their young farmers. I'm very pleased today to have 2 young farmers from the East Central Illinois area today to talk about what brought them into that business of agriculture and what keeps them involved in an industry that's affected by many outside factors. So today we have with us Doug Hansen. Doug, good to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Rick Aiden from both gentlemen kind of up north of Champaign a little bit. Good to have you on the program today. Rick, I'm going to start out with you. Gosh, farming is a very interesting occupation. And a lot of times in your high school guidance counselor's office, there wasn't a brochure that said, I want to be a farmer. What got you started in your farming operation?
Well, I started out on I'm a 4th generation farm, and in 1988 my grandfather gave me the opportunity while I was still in high school to rent 100 acres from him, and that operation's expanded today to several thousand. And just through ag and the FFA, we were very involved in high school, and so as you could see, I didn't have a whole lot of choice, but I enjoyed it in high school, and it grew from there.
Now, when you were growing up, did you live on the farm?
Yeah, I lived on the farm in rural St. Joe, between rural St. Joe and Royal.
Tell me about your family. How, mom, dad, brothers, sisters, grandma and grandpa, what kind of family?
Well, I farm today with my mother and father, and then we added a full-time hired hand about 3 years ago. And my wife and I live on the home farm. We moved to the home farm about 5 years ago, and like I say, that's a century farm that's been in our family for well over 100 years.
You know, that's an interesting program. The County Farm Bureau a few years ago put that program in front of a lot of farmers, and we've got lots of them here in Champaign County that have been owned and operated by the same family for over 100 years.
In our particular case, the house that I live on was built in 1904, so it's a 100-year farm, and they actually built the barn before they built the house, so they had to make an income, Grandpa always said, to something to live off of before they built the house.
Cool. Well, that's fantastic. Let's switch over to Doug here for just a second. Doug, glad to have you on the program today. Tell us what got you started in the farming operation. Did somebody force you into it, or did you decide you just kind of wanted to do that?
It was by my choice. I guess ever since I can remember, I haven't ever wanted to do anything else. I think there's a memory of me when I turned 5. My dad got me a set of tools, and he was had a new planter out planting with and had some trouble, and I went trotting out across the field. And he made sure he did use one of the tools I had to help out. But I have always wanted to do something. That's kind of been a childhood dream, and most people, when I tell that, is like they dream of being an astronaut or something like that. Well, so I always dreamed of being a farmer, and I have fulfilled a childhood dream to do what I wanted to do. So
that's great.
Yep.
Well, tell us about what brought you up that stage. Where'd you go to high school, and then your post-high school education?
I went to Fisher High School, graduated as a bunny, go bunnies, and attended University of Illinois after that in the agriculture mechanization program. I looked at agronomy as another major too, but ag mechanization kind of had a good all-around background for going into farming, because I could take almost as many agronomy classes I wanted to, and some ag econ, along with ag mech classes that were kind of for the nuts and bolts as far as farming would go then too. Cool.
All right, well, let's switch over to Rick. We've heard Doug got a little education after high school. Tell us about your educational path.
Yeah, I went to the University of Illinois, and I majored in ag economics. And at first I was looking at becoming a farm manager. In my senior year of college, Ironically, I got a call from a farm manager wanting to know whether I'd like to rent a farm up in the Armstrong area. So I took advantage of that situation, rented that farm, and when I started out, I had about 500 acres, and we needed to look for either off-farm jobs or else diversify somehow. So the particular farm that I was on had some rough ground, so we incorporated a purebred livestock business, and we raised Hereford and Angus cattle on that.
Now, would you call that a part of the farming operation? Is livestock truly what you would call farming because it's not row crop? How do you define those two things?
Yeah, definitely. In the beginning, it started out as added income. You know, we either had to get it off the farm or we had to diversify, and definitely the purebred livestock industries provided good income for us in addition to the row crops over the years.
Now, would you say that the idea to go into livestock agriculture was because of the ground, because of the love of livestock, or was there another factor?
Well, it was probably, I started out in 4-H and we showed livestock, so I had a love for it. At the same time, I had a farm that was adapted to it too, so I had the best of both worlds there, I guess.
There you go. Well, Doug, I know you kind of went a different direction to find additional income to supplement the farming operation. Tell us, you do something else off the farm?
Yes, I'm a part-time crop insurance adjuster. That I kind of fell into that, I guess, after I graduated in '95. Our crop insurance agent knew that the adjuster that usually worked in his area was moving on and wanted to know if I'd be interested because he kind of knew our size situation. There wasn't quite enough acres for 2 incomes completely, and I wanted to know if I would be interested, and I said, yeah, it would sound like it'd be a good opportunity. So I started in the fall of '95 and have been doing that part-time ever since. And it's worked out very well because usually when we're farming, most other farmers are doing the same thing, and they don't want to worry about any crop insurance claims or anything like that. And after we're completed with that, then I can get into that area then too after harvest and things like that, or during hail season during the spring and summer. And another nice side benefit is it comes with insurance benefits, and as most self-employed people know, health insurance can get pretty expensive when you're self-employed. Well, I was able to belong to a group, so they came quite a bit cheaper then.
A question that I have a lot of people ask me, farmers in general, used to be, you think of a farmer just worked on the farm, never left, was always there, did almost 24 hours a day because you live and work 50 feet from your operational center. What do you think the situation is now? You talk to a lot of different farmers in your job. Do a lot of farmers work off the farm as well?
Yeah, it's kind of almost geographic in our state. When you move south, you either have larger farms or smaller farms where they have either work during the week and farm on the weekends because they just enjoy it and have always done it. But most farmers either have a spouse that works, or a lot of them have another off-farm job, or like Rick are big into livestock then.
Rick, what about you? You've got friends in agriculture and other young farmers around. Do you see a lot of them working off the farm? And if so, what kind of jobs are farmers good at that tie into their farming operation?
Yeah, I seen quite a bit of that back in the 90s. When we had $2.50 corn, you had to go off the farm to find better ways of income and diversified ways of income. And what I see is quite a few farmers' wives working off the farm for added income and as well as the health benefits, like Doug says.
There you go. Well, I know there's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of challenges to working on the farm. And tell you what, we're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, we're going to find out just what type of benefits and challenges these fellows face in their farming operation. We'll be right back.
The average age of Illinois farmers is increasing. In 1992, the average age was 52, and in 2002, the average age was 55.
Welcome back to Champaign County Agriculture Today. We've been talking about farming and young farmers and the benefits and the challenges thereof. So I'm going to have these guys, I'm going to put them on the spot and find out what some of the good parts and bad parts of farming. Doug, let's start out with you. What would you say is the best part of being a young farmer today?
Being your own boss. You only have one person to answer to, and that's yourself. So if something goes wrong, you're the one to blame. But if something goes right, you're the one that can take the credit for it then too. That's probably one of the biggest benefits I have. And then I just like working outdoors, being, my brother-in-law always asked me, he said, why don't you ever have a garden when I was younger? And just first starting, I said, well, it's kind of this garden all around my house. And I mean, I just really enjoy, getting outside and working, and then just, being out in, having all that sea of green out there in the spring and summer.
All right, so
I enjoy the harvest in the fall then too, I guess.
There's the good things. There's got to be something bad about it. There's got to be one thing that you don't like about farming.
Probably, especially now that I have I've started a family, is some of the time constraints involved in the spring and fall. We were running some pretty long hours like this. To do an example, this spring we were planning. We were trying to get out in the field by 6, and I was coming in at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. And in the harvest, I can even get it strung out a little bit longer, so you kind of get a little bit of time away from family. But you can make up for that in the rest of the year, when you can have a little bit more flexible hours to be with them then too.
There you go. Rick, I'm going to put the B on you there. I know you're doing livestock. Those cows like to eat every day, don't they? Do you get many days off? How does that work out?
One of the main things I enjoy about farming, a lot of farmers don't enjoy this, but I enjoy the economics part of it, sitting behind the desk and crunching the numbers and working the efficiencies of different things. And I guess that's what I enjoy, the marketing. I've grown, my marketing skills have grown over the years, and I really enjoy that, and take time through the internet, to learn more about how to make our farm more efficient, today. So
that's a good question. You mentioned the internet. Gosh, you live out there in the rural areas where the good wired connections aren't there. What type of access to television, internet, some of the high-tech things, is that available to you?
Yeah, well, we have our internet access through Dish Network, and that was about the only way we could get it where we live out there. So, and it works real well. We're able to get online and chat with other farmers about the way they've become efficient on their farm, and just different ideas. I enjoy doing that and sharing ideas and getting into some of the new practices. We've always been big on no-till, and that started back in the 90s, but it's going to become more and more advantageous with the high fuel prices. So that's some of the aspects I like. Some of the drawbacks, some of the hours you put in, and like Doug said, it shortens the time you have with your family. I have 2 children, and you don't get to go to quite as many ball games as you might want to, but you try to make time for that.
There's a good question right there. It's Saturday afternoon, you've put in a hard week, and there's crops to be harvested. Who tells you what to do on Saturday afternoon? How does that work?
In my operation, there's never a choice. We work 24/7, it seems like, but in the springtime we'll work 16-hour days, and when the crop needs to be put in, we'll put it in, whether it's weekend or whatever, and when it needs to be taken out, we take it out. So
would you say that, I'm going to turn to Doug here, Mother Nature is kind of in control of your time schedule?
Yes, as people saw this past spring, it was very much in control. We get prepared, we have all our machinery ready to go, so when we can go, we do. But as an example, in May this year in our area, we had over 7 inches. We got into the end of the first week, and then we were rained out for the next 2 weeks, which pushed us into a late planting period, or later than usual, later than average, I should say. And that's when we come into harvest. Right now, we harvest when it's, the sun's out, and if it starts raining or anything like that, that shuts us down. So.
Another question I hear once in a while from folks is the weather. Is your job actually affected by the weather?
Very much so. Very much so. We. As most people know, plants grow with the sun, and the more sun you have, the better. But you also have to have quite a bit of moisture and timely. That's probably even more of an issue to get it timely at certain times. Earlier in the year, once you get things planted, you just need a little bit to get it the plants up and going. But my grandpa used to always say, a dry June is good. Well, we've kind of moved that up into a dry May to make sure everything roots down, and then have wetter late June and July to as the corn pollinates and starts producing an ear. And then for soybeans, we'd like to have a wetter August to fill the beans out. And then, again, always wanting to have everything the way we want it. We want to have a little bit drier during harvest so we can have plenty of days to get in and get everything grown.
So weather is a big factor there.
Very, very big. Everybody likes to plan and use it as much as they can, but Mother Nature has probably the final say.
There you go. That's what it takes, whether you work a 5-hour day or a 15-hour day.
Exactly.
Maybe it would take something of that. Rick, you've been through the U of I, you've done a lot of studying, you got your degree. Was that about all you needed to farm, or have you learned more out on the farm?
Well, just as important at the U of I always say, not just what you learn there, but the contacts you made. And the agriculture is a big industry as far as the people you meet, and that gives you the opportunity to reach out and go get more farms and be involved in the agribusiness industry, I guess.
How about the learning side of that? Do you learn from your neighbors, from your in-laws, outlaws? Do you learn from that practical side?
Exactly. My operation, I'm pretty unique. I'm pretty lucky. I have a brother-in-law that works in the fertilizer industry, and he keeps me up on everything pretty well, that goes on in that industry, and that is changing dramatically. Our fertilizer needs and energy needs are quite important these days.
Doug, what about you? You got your degree and you went back to the farm. Does the learning stop there?
No, it doesn't. As an example, my wife's a high school teacher, and she has continuing education requirements to keep up with her with her certificate. Well, farmers don't necessarily have continuing education requirements, but it's to their benefit to keep up with what's new. Every year in January, we always attend the corn and soybean class that the University of Illinois puts on, and we usually try to, for a round, go to Agronomy Day in the fall too, or in August. And then just throughout the year, there's various periodicals and stuff that have different articles in them about either new types of tillage, say strip tillage, or new hybrids coming along, that kind of thing. So you always have to keep up on what's current so you can maintain your farm and keep your bottom line healthy too.
Mm-hmm. Rick, you're a young guy. You've been on the farm now. How many years have you actually been farming on your own?
I started farming in 1988.
88, okay. What has changed from even the back memories, maybe with your dad or your grandpa? Tell me something that's changed on your farm that you can just think out of the top of your head that's different than the way you do it today.
Well, it seemed like in the beginning we were all striving to produce, that 200 bushel corn, or produce the most bushels possible, And now we're in an era where we have the genetics and everything to produce that. Now we need to become as efficient as possible. Efficiency was always key, but we need to keep our costs down and our input costs and that. And I'd say that was the biggest change, is how efficient we need to become these days.
Very good. Doug, how about on your farming operation? Have you seen, for example, the equipment? Is there differences in the equipment that your father or grandfather used as compared to what you're using today?
Yes, the equipment now, for one, is much more efficient, which is good in these times of high fuel prices, but also there's much more technology involved in that machine. The machine will almost watch itself in some respects as far as monitoring important items like oil pressure or things like that to monitor the engine, keep it healthy. But also there's the things such as auto steer. Well, they will use the GPS, the satellite system, to steer itself after you've set up a certain track, so that maintains your efficiency, so you're not lapping too much or skipping as far as that goes.
Well, let me get this straight. You're saying that you can be out there on your tractor and you don't have to touch the steering wheel?
No, only to turn on the end.
You still got to turn on the end.
Well, some of them, I guess the new ones are coming out where it'll turn automatically on the end too. But right now, most of the ones that the farmers use now, once you set it on its line, you can let go.
Okay.
And the nice thing about that is you can also then watch the equipment you're using and make sure it's performing up to optimum specs. Mm-hmm. As an example, when you're harvesting in the fall, if you've got the auto steer going with your as you're cutting soybeans, you can maintain that machine better as far as keeping the crop flowing in evenly and not worrying about where you're steering.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of technology going on.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, we're going to take another short break here, but when we come back, we're going to find out from these guys what they're doing out there when they don't have to steer the tractor. We'll be right back.
The number of people a single farmer can feed has been steadily increasing. In 2005, a farmer could feed 144 people. By 2007, that number had risen to 152 people.
Okay, we're back. I hope your hands did not leave the TV remote control there while we were going. These guys are telling me they can drive through the field without touching the steering wheel. There must be something else to do. What else do you do? Well, I'm going to turn to Rick here for just a second. Do you do some remote steer on your equipment also?
We have it on our soil finisher. That's the tool that runs in front of the planter in the springtime. And the main reason we got it, like Doug said, it helps your efficiency. You're not overlapping, and you're using the least amount of fuel as possible.
Let me get the overlap. That's what are you lapping there? Is that
Well,
like
when
the
you're going through
NASCAR?
the
Guy's lapping? No, it's different
No.
than that, right?
When you're going through the field, you have about anywhere from a 30 to 60 foot pass that you're tilling that ground as you go through the field, and you want to stay right on line with that every pass. That's what the auto steer helps you to do, so that you're not taking longer than you need to do a particular process.
Well, I could understand that possibly then why you guys are applying fertilizer or crop protection chemicals. If you're not overlapping, you're more efficiently using those resources.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where all this started in the fertilizer industry. We started doing variable rate technology, and that's where we just put the fertilizer where it pays the most to have it. We don't over fertilize, and we keep our soil tests at certain levels so that it's helped out our efficiencies.
Well, one thing I'm getting from both of you gentlemen talking here today is that getting into farming was kind of a family deal. It kind of came in through your family. Doug, can you think of anybody? Is there a way if somebody watching the program today decides they want to start farming next year, can it be done?
I would say yes, but it's all in who you know. If you would have a friend or somebody down the road that you maybe worked with. To me, just the capital that would be involved just to start on your own and say tomorrow I want to start farming would be, to me, it would be cost prohibitive, I would think. And then also trying to obtain ground when you don't have any history as far as in that area or anything like that associated with the family that farms or whatever, to have to have just like an experience behind your name or anything like that, so that they would rent you the ground.
The ground is still key and important.
Exactly.
Rick, what kind of ways can a young farmer that's getting started, how can land be added to their farming operation? Because without land, you don't have an operation.
Yeah, it's good to have a family base behind you. That sure helped me over the years. We're going into an era right now where it's very tough to buy land for a young farmer. But I'm not saying it's not possible, but you're going to have a good relationship with your banker and look at things like that. So.
Gentlemen, you're both into the more mainstream type of agriculture. We're talking row crops, livestock, in Rick's behalf. Doug, how about small tract farming? Are we seeing much of that? Is that a way for a young farmer to get into the business?
There are some things like that, niche farms as far as growing foreign organic farms, like for farmers markets, or even some overseas production like for Japan or things like that. There is some of that, some truck crops too, especially if those probably work a little better when you're closer to a big city center where you would have a market for that kind of product. I've seen some of that though, just in crop insurance. You'll see those smaller farms around.
So it's not really mainstream, but it's out there. Rick, what about the livestock side?
Yeah, you definitely see that on the livestock. There's demand for certain genetics, and especially in purebred herds. You could get by with 10, 15 head of beef cows and provide a certain trait or genetics to the beef industry.
Now, does that, if you had 15 head of cattle, how many acres would you need to accurately
usually in
raise
central
it?
Illinois, you figure 1 acre per head of beef cow. So
Okay.
15, 20 acres, you could get by pretty easily.
Okay. Well, are there other alternatives? You talked about your livestock as being a part-time job, or maybe more than that. Doug, it sounds like your job keeps you busy. What have you seen other young farmers do to keep them busy, for example, in the winter months?
I've seen quite a few guys either have a truck or drive semi-trucks over the road or hauling grain, things like that. I'm trying to think of some other ones. There's a lot of guys, you do painting or things like that, or work for, sometimes it'll be like a part-time work in a factory, such as like Hobbico or Kraft in town. They can get some part-time job over the winter.
As a general trait, would you say that farmers, one of the things you have to be is handy? Is that an important part?
Correct. I would say definitely.
Without a doubt, right?
I'd say in my area, we have quite a few farmers that work with the townships, working on the roads and the ditches. Tiling's become a big, putting field tile in fields is become a big industry out our way, and several farmers work in that business too.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the future. Where are things headed? You both got your families. You both are establishing yourselves in the business world. Doug, what's your challenges? What's your goals looking down the road? Do you like where you're at, or are there some things you'd like to do a little different?
Probably challenges coming down the road is as my dad gets older and gets closer to retirement would be replacing that labor. if you ask anybody in any industry, labor can be an issue as far as getting good quality labor to help out. And right now, with the size of our operation, there's too much for just one person. The way we're doing it now, so probably one of my goals is maybe look to some different tillage methods that are maybe a little less labor intensive, so that I could then farm the acres we have, but just with less manpower. That's that's one of the things I'm looking at in the future.
Rick, what about your operation? Anything that you'd like to
Well,
change as you look to the future?
I'm pretty optimistic on the future. I guess I always have been the last 20 years, but if you're not optimistic agriculture right now, something's wrong, because everything looks very good. Some of the prices we're paying for inputs concern me a little bit. Sometimes I feel like we're handling a lot, or I know for a fact we're handling a lot more money than we have in the past, and I feel like a bank. But other than that, going forward, there's endless opportunity in agriculture, what I see.
Tell me about the family setup. Doug, how much does your family help out in the actual day-to-day operation?
My wife, I said she's a school teacher, but my mom in the spring, she's very integral in that she provides hot lunches and hot suppers, which is kind of a nice thing when you're out working long hours to not have a sandwich or something like that. And now that since she's retired in the fall, she actually will run the auger wagon for the combine, or sit at the grain bin watching the wagons unload to make sure everything's okay. So that helps us out efficiency-wise.
So do you have peaks and valleys in your operation? What are those peaks again when you need the help?
We need the help, probably more help during harvest. And in the spring, it's just her assistance as far as keep getting us shuttled, as far as that, moving equipment around, things like that. But for us, our peak use time, or labor time, would be during harvest.
Okay, Rick, you're probably a little bit different, kind of the same, but a little bit different.
We keep a full-time guy busy all year round. We either haul grain or working with the livestock. There's always something to do with that. And my mother helps out in the fall, in the harvest, and in the spring. And my father's semi-retired, but he still helps out quite a bit. And my wife works off the farm, and we do a lot of the farm records together, my wife and I, in what we call our off time, when we never know when that is. So
A question I always hear from people, I was going to ask you guys earlier, and I didn't. What's your hobby? Doug, what's your hobby?
Probably my hobby. I love reading about World War II history. I had a grandpa and some of my mom's uncles that were in World War II, so I enjoy that. And then also I like machinery. Working on machinery is actually kind of a fun thing to do for me.
Rick, what about you?
My biggest hobby is showing livestock. We go to county fairs or state fairs, and then we become more involved in Illinois athletics. We follow the Illinois athletic teams around.
There you go. Well, it's not only good to have a good job, but it's also good to have a good hobby. And it sounds like you guys have got best of both worlds. Is the future bright for agriculture, Doug? What do you think?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very much so.
You're not ready to give it up today,
No,
huh?
I'm
All
as
right.
optimistic as ever.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, guys, appreciate your time and sharing all those thoughts with us. As you can see, folks, agriculture is an occupation that takes people that have self-motivation, encouragement, and some entrepreneurialism in there, too, to keep it going. It's a big occupation, and it's a big responsibility to get up every day and, as these guys do, make it happen. We appreciate you getting up today and watching the program. We hope that you'll tune in again next time when, once again, we have a chance to tell you what's going on at Champaign County Agriculture Today. Until then, I'm Dennis Riggs. Thanks for listening.
Champaign County Agriculture Today is brought to you by Champaign County Farm Bureau.